Berna, I have a few questions for you. I loved what information that you have provided. However, as a layperson, can you tell me the support system that the school offers for the children of neurodiversity?
So it depends on the system in the school and also the emirate. So in Abu Dhabi, for instance, there is a teacher, a special needs teacher that's qualified as a teacher per phase or cycle, and they work as the SEN teacher in that cycle. You also have TAs in the school system that works in every classroom or every year group, depending on the age of the children. Then you have every single teacher in the UAE have to have some training, whether that's through the regulatory bodies or whether that's through the school itself on inclusion, like we do with safeguarding, very similar. Then you've got another layer where you have either a link teacher or a phase leader that looks after a group of teachers or group of TAs who work with our students of determination. They also often oversee the LSAs, who is our learning support assistants or individual assistants as they are called in Abu Dhabi. Then you also have the SENCO, maybe that could be a phase SENCO, so it's primary special needs coordinator who looks just after this, the SEN register or inclusion register for primary. Then you might have an equivalent in secondary as well. And then every single school in the UAE must have a head of inclusion or a senior leader that looks after the whole of the inclusion piece of that school. Then there's also a governor, an inclusion governor, that serves on the school's authority or their lab, as we call it here. And the role of the inclusion governor is to ensure that every single child, not just a child with needs, but every single child is thought of when we talk about what are we doing next, functions we're looking at, data we're looking at. Their job is to always ask, but what about this child? What about this? So you have these different layers. Then, of course, you also have the management responsibility of all things inclusion in a school belongs to the head of school or the principal. And then we have the regulatory authorities. Now, in the best systems in our schools, what happens is we also have the clinics who link in. Most of our schools, especially in GEMS, work with 10 or more clinics because it's the parent's preference. We do often say, we often see good reports from this clinic or that clinic, or we would advise this clinic or that clinic for a specific thing. And then where those connections work well, the head of inclusion or SENCO is also then the link person with the clinic or the clinicians, like the OT or the occupational therapist, the speech therapist, the behavior therapist, and so forth.
Thank you so much. And my question to you, Haneesha, is what is the support system that one can find in a clinic setting for children of diversity?
Okay. So it's again multidisciplinary. It would be a team of professionals who would cater to the needs of the child. So these could again be therapists, like Ms. Berna was mentioning, a speech and language therapist, an occupational therapist, a physical therapist, a behavior analyst or a behavior specialist who's working in. And most often when it's a multidisciplinary, there is a developmental pediatrician who oversees, and if there are needs of mental health, psychology, psychiatry, or neurology, which get involved as well. So based on the individual needs, I think the support system kind of blends in to understand where they are supported.
The costs for this would be quite a lot. So how do parents actually manage, one, the school fees, if at all they get into the right school, and also the fees of the clinic?
It's an interesting piece because, as you say, it is quite expensive and it all goes back onto the parent. But I always say that support should not depend on price point. And what we often see with parents is they choose a school because a school is a school is a school, because education, good quality education, does not depend on how much money you pay at that school. You might be paying for some extra facilities, or you might be paying for a smaller class group and those things. But if a parent has to balance the school fees and the therapy fees, what we often see parents do is they either have a conversation with the school and says, guys, we really can't afford both of these, how can we make this work? And then we speak to the clinic, it's the same thing. Or they choose a cheaper school so that they can pay for therapy as well. I think the key is very few children are on therapy programs continuously every single day for the whole life. So when you are thinking about therapy and when you are thinking about schools, it's good to spend a bit more money on the therapy, because that's the biggest impact that we see in the shortest intervention time, so that then the money can be spent on other things like education or trips or things like that.
Haneesha, my question for you is, how can the clinic support the parents, and does insurance cover any of this?
We do see a changing scene with terms of insurance as well. There are insurances which do cover therapy supports, although I would say it's a smaller proportion compared to, so it's not a rule which says, okay, all insurance are going to cover for developmental therapies. Most often, or otherwise, I would say they don't, but they do have the premium network of insurances or global insurances which do cover therapeutic settings, yes.
As a community, can we help or volunteer to do anything for children of diversity and their parents? Because like you said, self-care, what happens is parents are so involved in looking after their children, and with neurodiverse children is even more.
Yeah.
So how can we as a community reach out or help out or volunteer?
You know what, there's this, I don't know if you've ever been involved in the diabetes walk that's once a year. And what you see there is there's loads of people who come to this community day. And it's not just people with diabetes or who knows people with diabetes. It's literally, I want to say, thousands of people who come to this walk. But what you get there is you get play places for the children, you get food for the children, you get all of these wonderful opportunities for children to be normal for a day. And oftentimes that's what our children need most, is to be included, to be involved. So as a community, is run these days, run these meetups, run these groups for our parents and for our children so that they can feel included. But on a smaller scale, knock on your neighbor's door and say, is there anything I can do? I can see, you've been really busy. Why don't I bring you some lunch? Or anything that you can do for your neighbor or for your friend across the road makes a huge difference. When we talk about fundraising and those kind of things, because as you say, it's very important, there's very many laws in the UAE that governs that. And it's better then for those things to actually speak to your local schools or the schools where your children are and see how we can support that, rather than trying to, raise money for a specific cause in Dubai.
One last question. Would it be financially helpful if someone does homeschooling and then pay for the therapies?
You know what? It's interesting that you ask that question, because homeschooling is not necessarily cheap schooling. Because what you need to do as a parent when you homeschool is you have to register with all these boards and you have to register with the curriculum, but then you have to add everything into your child's curriculum that the school normally offers as part of their standard package. So you have to do trips, you have to do sport, you have to do swimming and running and jumping and, these contact days with other children. And then you also have to do the therapy. So I think it's a misconception that homeschooling is necessarily cheaper. I think as a parent, educate yourself and see what option works best for your child, because you might be saving some money at homeschooling, but creating other difficulties for your child by isolating them. So I would always say, do what's right for your child and for your pocket.
Brilliant. Thank you so much.